Hello, my friends. As you can see, I'm with my brother from another mother, Mr. Paul Jones, and we are at the DMG MORI Chicago Tech Days, surrounded by some of the most magnificent machines that you will see. Definitely one of the largest companies, if not the largest on the planet when it comes to manufacturing. We are currently standing beside a massive machine. Paul, let's talk a little bit about what's going on here.
It's massive, isn't it? I mean, a DMC 125 FD. Now, this machine is obviously, it's a 5-axis machine, but it's got turning on it as well. I mean, look at the size of the part. I mean, it's just monstrous. But the key to the demo that they're showing here is the measurement aspect. There's like a head on there that's actually inspecting a gear spline. So just showing off the technology that they can offer, not only on big machines, but small machines too. Nice to see you too anyway, by the way.
What's that?
I said nice to see you too as well anyway.
Always a pleasure. Yeah. So when we talk about a machine like this and we talk about that measuring, first thing that pops into my head is most of the time, and maybe you've seen it as well, it's usually a partner of some sort that adds that measuring system and some sort of automation cell as well. This is one of the unique times where you see it all built into one by one company.
Exactly, and you can also see the feedback on the control. There's like a point cloud that's developed, so you can actually really interrogate and inspect, like you say, through one machine and one piece of software.
I love interrogating my parts.
Absolutely.
So let's take a walk as we go through here. There are dozens and dozens of machines. There's projected to be over 1,000 people at this event, which is kind of cool as well.
How long is it running for?
It's going to run for the full week. Today is actually Sunday, but it'll be the full week, and everyone is invited to be here. So get in your car, hop on a plane, whatever it takes. Come see what we're looking at and explaining to you right now, although if you can't make it, this is going to be a pretty good tour as well. So let's take a look at this machine, Paul. What do we have going on?
So this is the NTX 500. This is a world premiere, really focused on the medical sector. Now the machine is, I mean, you look at the size of it, it's a multitasking, multi-purpose machine, all in a really, really neat footprint. And if we bring the camera, or one of the cameras closer to it, if you look at this head on here, it's the size of an iPad. It's the size of an iPad. I mean, that just goes to show you, you know, what we're talking about here as a machine. You've got extremely fast spindle speeds on here, even on the bottom turret, 12,000 RPM. And you can see for those intricate medical components, the automation can load and unload these parts. It really is going to be, you know, it's pretty groundbreaking technology here from DMG MORI, which we can see. A sub-spindle machine. Really fast spindle speeds on the front and on the back, so for those smaller components you can really get them off quickly.
Yeah, and if we get another one of the camera guys to kind of zoom in on these tooling, when you mention small medical parts and I look at those tools, I know immediately that I need the RPM in order to produce that. And as I look on the back side, I see an automation cell as well.
Yeah.
So this is something that's going to produce at higher rates, multiple parts through the night, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Process reliability is important as well. That's why you need things like, you know, the linear scales feedback on this machine. All of those things make it not just quick and small, but extremely accurate as well. And of course, this is the system that's going to load and unload parts. You've got like a stacking system as well on here. So it's a pretty good start to our tour.
It definitely is, and you always see those Fanic robots, don't we? Everywhere we go.
So when you have a medical part inserted in your body, it may well have been made on there.
And I'm getting about that age where I'm going to start needing those surgeries, you know, God forbid. But we got Spider-Man head over here, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Let's talk a little bit about this machine.
Okay, so I want to talk to you now about what's happening here on this machine and what DMG MORI is showing here, which is a whole process. Now we're probably starting where we should finish, but what we've got in here is is basically a printed part, which is printed on a machine we'll look at in a minute, and then they're machining it on this 5-axis DMU 85 monoblock. Now the purpose behind actually printing this casting, if you want to call it that, is because it's a lot lighter when it comes onto this machine, and it's actually printed within about an hour. So instead of waiting for a casting to be cast and everything you need that surrounds that, you can get the casting on there and then machine it very, very quickly. So, yeah.
So as you've mentioned, we have kind of done this in reverse, and we're going to go see the printing in just a minute. But to Paul's point, this is lighter. You don't have the lead times of fighting overseas. Here in the US, most of our factories for these types of parts have been shut down, and we always have to bring them over. So imagine now you can print it, then you machine it, you have a finished part, it's beautiful, it's ready to go. We have a massive reshoring initiative going on right now, and this is one of those processes that matter.
And I mean, we haven't even spoken about the machine, but it kind of speaks for itself when you look at it. A tremendous 5-axis monoblock machines. We look at a lot of these in the UK, but, you know, hey, they're popular around the world.
No, we see these all over the US as well.
Let's have a look at where that part actually finishes up. Now,
we absolutely should, because we are talking about Siemens as well as it's being branded, but this is a knuckle of some sort going into the car, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a knuckle joint for the on the end of the steering column is where it would end up.
The wheel knuckle, I believe, right?
Wheel knuckle, that's where it ends up. So you can see the kinds of applications what are being shown and where it's used.
And as we go in reverse through this process, we are now at the first step of the process, which is the printing. And I would love if we could get a camera to look inside of this as well, because it always fascinates me how these parts are done.
See, this is the LaserTech 30 dual SLM and basically selective laser melting. But you've got dual heads in here, which means you can almost double the speed of printing parts. And this is where that part was actually printed that we've just looked at. The great thing as well about this, Tony, is these, when you're printing these, the integrity is incredible. 99.9% density on printing. Now, you know, when you cast something, you may have issues with those. It's kind of saying you don't get that with this process and these machines. This system here is where you actually, if you wanted to go from stainless to titanium or to other materials, you kind of change this system. I'm trying to familiarise myself. Yeah, it's the replug. You basically move one out the way and bring another one in, so you can go from material to material pretty quickly. There are a few things you obviously need to consider, but it's really
it doesn't seem overly complicated where a decade ago it was, right?
Absolutely.
We're making it simpler and simpler, faster and faster. That's kind of been the conversation when it comes to additive manufacturing, is if I get into metal, why is it so slow? But we're getting there now. We're getting to places that matter, to get it from one place to another place. And when we really think about going back to that last conversation about the lead times that we've all been fighting for the last couple of years, this is an answer.
It is, absolutely. So, and we'll see a lot more 3D printing technology as we move through the technology centre as well.
Now we're talking about gear hobbing though, aren't we?
Gear hobbing, I mean, this is something that, you know, the standards that you can achieve on gear hobbing these days is really, really precise and to industry standards that you need. These machines here, I mean, twin spindle, these heads, these compact heads, these compact masters, look at the size of them. I mean, they're as tall as they are wide. So, of course, that means you can get longer parts in between the spindles, and there's no compromise on speed and power on these. They are, yeah, tremendous technology. Come with, I believe, a 3-year warranty on these as well, which shows their belief in how, you know, how good they are.
You know, you've taken most of my bullet points from me. You talked about no sacrifice of power, even though it's a smaller head, bigger parts.
It's like you, it's fast and small and powerful. There you go.
Something else to go on to this, though, is a lot of times, historically, what I've seen is even though this part is coming off finished, I see it a lot of times where it needs 2, 3, 4 machines to get the same piece done as we look over here. So combining operations, as we've redundantly talked about, but very importantly so, is the fact of how many operations can we combine, which saves time, which saves labor, which saves money.
Yep. And there's 100 tools in this as well.
Woo.
So, you know, you've got a lot of options, a lot of availability of inventory to make parts. And then we move on to the NTX 2000.
And this looks kind of similar to the last one we were talking about, Paul. What are some of the differences?
So on this particular machine, you've got a turret on the bottom of the machine. You've got a similar head. You've got, you know, the heads that we've been talking about, but they're just built in different in different territories, essentially. Both machines claiming to be 5-axis champions. You can do all that multitasking machining on them. This particular machine, I believe, has got slightly more tools on it. The carousels here, but just look at the accessibility for this as well, for the operator to be able to get in and change tools. You know, in the old days, the tools were always at the back, hidden away, weren't they? And it's, you know, whoops, not quite so easy to...
You wouldn't believe how many times I had to physically load and unload tools based on how many operations I had in my job. And even if we don't need 100 different tools, how important is redundancy, especially when we get to those harder materials, and as automation becomes so important
Unmanned
running through the
running,
night.
sister tooling and all the rest of it. So yeah. Here's some of the kinds of applications as well that these types of machines make.
Well, this is a fun little funky one right here, isn't it? I like that one. I love how creative machinists are. You know, I always use, when I make a post on some of the social media with MTD, I use the word part, but put into parentheses the word P because we make so much art. And that's kind of what we're doing everywhere. And sometimes it's practical for bones and things that we've seen here, and sometimes it's a Spider-Man head. Yeah. But it's always a piece of art, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And then we have the DMF 200. Now this machine, it was launched a couple of years ago, but you can straight away see the 5-axis capability with that integrated table in the machine. As these machines expand, you can then begin to do pendulum machining. But I think the interesting point I'd touch on this machine is the linear motor X-axis here. Extremely quick from point to point, and very accurate too.
Well, Paul, I'd like to take this opportunity to do a favor for our DMG Mori friends down in Mexico. They recently reached out to us at MTD and said, we would like support talking about the importance of 5-axis machining and where it stands out, because in a lot of places around the world, you can still throw labor at things, right? But the ability, again, to combine operations, let's talk about how important it is and what a 5-axis machine in general can do for an operator instead of a 3-axis machine. What am I, as an operator, getting out from 5-axis in one machine versus the 3-axis?
Well, I think if you look at these traveling column style machines are available as 3-axis machines, but you won't be able to get to the sides of the component. You know, you're going to have to move that part around the machine to get to that face, which takes time and introduces the possibilities of error. And they're two very important factors in going for 5-axis machining. Everybody wants to make sure their parts come off accurately, and everybody wants to make sure they're spending as little time at the machine intervening as possible, and that does this. Now with this particular machine, the linear drive motor is the point I point out, is the fact that at 80 meters a minute you can get from this side to this side extremely quickly. And people say, well, do I need to? Well, maybe you do. Imagine if you had a long part between centres and you were machining up it, and then you had to go back to the end to machine again. If you're doing that cycle repeatedly, the benefit of having that 80 meters a minute is there.
Yeah, I agree. And as we take a walk over to the other area, Yvette, that one's for you over at DMG Mori in Mexico. For those of you in Mexico watching right now, think about that. If you're taking away operations, you're removing that chance of operator error and oftentimes secondary work. Secondary work leads to issues so regularly. So now you're combining your part processing, you're saving money, you're making money, and you're allowing your operators to do more of the things they love instead of running several machines and running around like crazy. So for those of you watching, I hope that's a little bit helpful. Do we want to touch on horizontal machining?
An NHX, horizontal machining center. They have a couple of these here. I think the point I'd make about the horizontals, certainly from our territory that we're from, is they're not sold frequently enough. You know, the horizontal machine has plenty of benefits to it: swarf fall away, loading up parts on cubes, productivity gains, all of those things, plus coupled with, you know, a pallet system like this, the RPS system, means you can leave it running unmanned.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summarized that. I don't even think I need to elaborate anymore. You're right. Chips falling down, longer tool life, better finish. The reason to have automation, it's all there.
Yeah. What about this?
So this is obviously a 5-axis head as well, but let's talk about this base here and why this is one of the more popular machines at DMG Mori as well.
So this is a knuckle table. This is the Evolution. Now these machines have been sold for years. In fact, when I used to work years ago for DMG at the time, I sold a load of Evo 5-axis machines, so popular, very competitively priced, and the range and the models have just expanded to become, you know, what they are today. But I think the point we're making here is the fact that here they're presenting 3 different work holding stations to the spindle, which means you can of course get more parts off once. More, it's again automation and unmanned running.
And not just more parts, Paul, but if you look at the dimensions of this area, if I had it shifted another way, the point of that knuckle is more and larger if necessary. Absolutely. Really gives that bigger footprint.
Yes, completely.
And these parts look fun. Gotta love those pieces that come out of the aerospace world. Okay, So now, when we think about DMG Mori, almost always I think massive machines, 5-axis machining, but this is more or less a standard slash not standard horizontal mill, isn't it?
I asked this gentleman earlier, I said, give me a few words on how you would best describe the CMX. And he said, a very dependable machine. And to be fair, that's a really good way of summarising it, because a vertical machining centre is a VMC, it's a milling machine, you need reliability, it needs to be able to take decent cuts, day in, day out, and I suppose dependable is a good word to summarise that.
Oh, it's the best word.
You need to be able to rely on it. Some of the points behind the machine that we'd like to pick up on is actually how the y-axis moves here on the spindle, rather than on the table where they often move front to back or back to front. Here it's actually moving on a ram almost, or an extension here. But what's key is this bit of casting. That bit of casting means that as the spindle comes out, it's secured and stable and solid in order to be able to, be a dependable machine.
And you've already said it, but those are my favorite parts. The fact that the Y is going to be in the head and the X is going to be in the base allows for larger parts because the base is going to be lower.
That's right.
And then the rigidity of the head itself. So we all know what rigidity does. Cuts faster, cuts deeper, better finish,
Yep.
all that stuff. Longer tool life goes right along with it. I've programmed a lot of horizontal and vertical machines, but never had the opportunity to program with this style of machine. I would love to do that at some point in my career.
Yeah, I mean, this, and the fact that, like you say, the table is the only axis moving there means you get more weight on it, it's slightly lower down. So yeah, a great vertical machining centre, a CMX.
And I like some of the parts they're making here as well. Quite creative. When you think of what a 3-axis machine can do, it almost looks like they've gotten more creative than what 3-axis work can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got the CMX 50. Now this
Yes.
this is DMG Mori's kind of entry into, or the offering into a marketplace where someone might be just after that 3+2 machine, first time into 5-axis, but want to buy into that DMG Mori brand, then the CMX 50U is where you probably start.
When you think of an entry level and you want something with quality, the DMG Mori sign goes up, right? That's what we think about. But then on top of that, and I'm sure it's there in the UK as well, for those of you watching right now, you may notice a small accent in this guy, so I'll go with UK and US as well. We're constantly fighting for real estate space, and this looks like a nice, compact, rigid, reliable machine that can give you what you need in a small footprint.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, small like you, small, compact, nimble.
Fast.
Yeah, fast.
You know, I will tell everyone on camera, flattery will get you everywhere with me, so keep those compliments
coming.
coming.
I'm not big, so, you know.
So this is one of my favorite style machines and what its capabilities are. Paul, would you like to go over that?
NTX 1000 multitasking machine, twin spindle, B-axis head, turret on the bottom. I think what's impressive about this machine is the machine, obviously, but the part it's making. And let's take a look, because
so shiny. And that's being done with OSG tools.
yeah, 12,000. We'll actually point out the tool to you as well. So if I put that down,
Yeah, but that's a beautiful part being made there.
diamond tip tool, running at 12,000 RPM on the machine to be able to create that surface finish. What they actually do when they're machining it is they use the bottom turret to support it as like a tailstop. How quickly do you think that's machined? Maybe we should ask the audience.
When you're thinking of finish like that, you know, I'm going to take a wild guess because we're on camera right now, but I'm going to say 3-4 hours?
1 hour.
1 hour. 1 hour to get finished like that, and all of those
you know what it's supposed to
components
be?
and edges.
Do you know what it's supposed to be? Christmas tree.
I mean, if you make one the size of an actual Christmas tree, I will be fascinated. I love these machines because I've seen them being used for not just turning, but for full mill projects that you would have on a typical and standard milling machine can now be done here in a lot of cases.
Absolutely.
Not all cases, but a lot of cases.
They still classify and label all of these sort of mill turn multitasking machines as 5-axis champions.
Right.
Because that's what they can do, you know, in amongst all of the other things. Look again at the tool changer. I know I keep pointing it out, but you know, it's great to have that there, so accessible to the operator, and quite small footprint as well for a 1000. And it's obviously got the automation on the top. In fact, is that a gantry that runs across the top of the machine? I think that's for your part ejection, but yeah. So plenty of options available with this machine too.
Yeah, one
and
of my
talking about
favorites.
automation.
So automation, 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 automation. How many times have we heard it? How many times have we been talking about it? We talk about global competition, being able to compete at that scale, getting prices down. We talk about labor shortages. We talk about all these components that go into automation. So here we have some,
yeah,
right?
I mean, it's portable, easy to use, easy to operate. Move it around the shop potentially to other machines. But here, loading billets into the NLX 2500, which I believe is DMG MORI's most popular selling turning centre. And you could obviously have a bar feed on this too if you wanted to, so you can go from bar work to billet work. But yeah, how popular is this sort of becoming for the reasons that we know and always
Everywhere, everywhere. And you beat me to it, but maybe you add a bar feed to that, and this Cobot is actually taking the parts out, putting it into a measuring system, and then putting it into a box. You know, this is the world of automation, where you go from raw stock into the box right away. Laser Tech 3000. Paul, what are we looking at here?
Do you know what? I can't tell you masses about this if I'm honest, but I think a lot of the visuals will speak for themselves. I mean, you've got, one of the things I think that is highlighted here at these tech days is that DMG MORI's machines that have maybe been either 5-axis machines or mill-turn machines are now incorporating this laser technology. So they're using the foundation of what they've created previously, which they know works and is successful, and then adapted or added the ability to do, you know, printing, laser work. You know, this is brilliant for not just adding material, but subtracting as well, because you've got a turret on this machine to turn, and so you know the limits are endless, or the opportunities are endless. Incredible.
Yeah, when we think about this topic, I'm obviously a bit more elementary when it comes to the overall understanding of as well. So I won't pretend to do or be something that I'm not, but I've seen some really fascinating components come off of these. Some things that I know could never be done in traditional manufacturing because the inside components are just,
well, let's have a look.
They look like a maze, right? And they look like such a complex situation that, you know, I could never make these intricate details. But at the same time, there is a structural reliability that goes into some of these parts, and oftentimes they're lighter and easier to work with. But I mean, look at this part right here. Are you kidding me? How are you ever going to do that in subtractive machining?
That's some engineering, because someone has studied and created and crafted a part based around strength, weight, and efficiency, and you can only do that with 3D printing additive technology, and that's the end result. You know, how else would you make it?
Exactly right, and you guys know I'm not that strong of a person, and yet I'm holding this for 5 minutes without much effort. So it also goes into the amount of weight. When we talk about the amount of weight that goes into a job, a lot of these machines will have max weight limits, and so we have to kind of abide by those rules. But when we get into this laser technology here, and we come up with these components, it's important to have the structural reliability, but that weight oftentimes comes into play along with the design. Guys and gals out there watching right now, how many of our engineers have created a design that are there for the machinist and go, well, how the heck am I going to make that? Well, with that being said, I think we end this tour, Paul, with a ring of the bell to say thank you all for watching.